Good morning, Tracy. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm fantastic, thank you. I wanted to first and foremost to thank you for taking the time to chat with me today. I know things have been a little turned upside down with the pandemic, so we've all become very used to the virtual environment, although it would have been a lot better to have done this in person with you. Before we jumped on here, we talked about how we met, and that was back in the day, gosh, years ago, through Volver, a wonderful workspace for women and community, and how networking was so integral to how we met and how so many of us entrepreneurs got to support each other. So,
Yeah, it was amazing. Because as we were chatting, I thought it was really funny because I come from a news background. And so starting a business was a first for me. Saying hi to your dog.
yeah,
It was the
that's
first for
Nala.
and so I didn't know. I mean, I just started with an idea of what I wanted to do, and it sort of drove me to start a business. I really had no interest in starting a business. And so at these networking things, it was really cool because you'd start at Evolver and you'd meet people, and then you go to WTF and you'd be like, hey, I know you. And like within a year, I was going to all these events and people were like, hey, Tracy, hey, Social Snacks. Like it just was this sort of great empowerment of I'm building something, it renewed it. I would talk to people and they'd be like, oh, we've heard of Social Snacks. And it was just that kind of thing. And I always laugh that when you were a guy, you'd hang out at a bar or play golf or the gym or cigars or, whatever. And that was just never like, I was never comfortable being with the guys in that guy's space. And so this was like the way women do it, the way it was comfortable to women was to get around and be able to dress and wear a cute outfit and hang out and drink and just chat. And so it just felt so natural. But it was great to start really seeing a community forming around women who were making things happen. And so you sort of fed off that energy. And maybe it was a fake it till you make it. You just felt like all these people were making it happen, so you were making it happen, and it sort of became like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
And I will say, I think we were very lucky to have had that community around us, because I can tell you from a personal standpoint, it was instrumental in helping me grow my practice.
Yeah.
Never having been an entrepreneur, like you said, I mean, until you've been in the spot, you really don't know what the roller coaster ride is like. And I think having that support group was just off the charts. It really helped make things bearable while you're growing as an entrepreneur. And I'll never forget when I met you at that event, and I want to hear more about your past in corporate, but I remember like Social Snacks, and I was like, oh, we're gonna get cheese popcorn or something. And you remember that? And you laughed and you're like, no. So I won't take away from what you're going to tell us about your company now, but I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I started in TV news, and I was in TV news for about 20 years. And even there, I was a little unique because I did something called special projects. So it wasn't the like fires and car accidents and day of news. It was always, I always say it was clickbait before it was clickbait. It was that, something in your kitchen will kill you. We'll tell you tonight at 10. See the incredible way she survived, this tragic thing that happened to her tonight at 10. It's like, whatever trend was, ball waxing, bras that kill, all of that kind of stuff. That was my station. I worked out at a lot of them, investigations, but mine were always like the female investigations, like condoms being sold past their expiration date. I was never like bust the judges. I was always doing some crazy women's magazine story. And so we did stories, but to get all those stories, you really had to get interviews. They were really human-centered stories. And so you really had to be able to learn how to get people to quickly engage with you, tell their story authentically, share something of themselves. And so that was something I always did really well. And so it was really my sweet spot. And then you'd have to take that story to be on at 10, but then you had to find a way to tell that story at 10 in the morning. So like for my highest rated story I ever did was Men Who Wax Down There. We called it The Boys from Brazil.
Landscaping.
Brazilian on your balls, highest rated one ever. But like you have to do that for the morning show. Well, you have to change it for that, or the noon when all, kind of the older people watch the noon show. So you had to adjust it for that. The 4 and the 5 and the 6. After Oprah, you have to think about that at 6 o'clock when you're probably doing things that are, murder and mayhem. And so you really learn how to take a story and then make it fit the places that you were going to put it on. And so you flash forward, and really news was dropping down to 45-second stories. It was just really quick, and I just felt like I didn't have a place there anymore. So I moved off of that and worked for a while as an editor in chief at a women's magazine online. And I don't even think it was a legit women's magazine online, but who else would make me like editor in chief? But I was. And we worked with brands like Del Monte and Huggies and Prego. And we were making these videos, and it was sort of, how do you make a lot? And we knew how to make a lot because news taught you how to guerrilla shoot. And so we'd make tons of content, and they were like, holy cow, this is a lot of video content for less money. And it was kind of all just socially oriented. And so at some point, we decided, a group of us decided, hey, I want to make content, but I don't want to own my own news magazine or magazine, right, because then you have to go get money to keep it running. We're like, we just really want to make cool stuff and have them pay. And about the same time, the world changed for us. And all these companies got Facebook and Instagram and websites and YouTube channels, and they suddenly became their own publishers. And we knew how to create tons of content because in news, you learned all the tricks to make tons of content. And so we thought, what if we do that? So started Social Snacks, which is now the Social Snacks Company. And the idea was making snack size video to feed your social and digital monsters. Because in news, it was always, feed the beast, kind of just cranking content and keep feeding this beast. We didn't feel like social and digital was quite so beast oriented. So you can see our brand is all about little monsters, because that's what we feel like all the digital world is all these hungry little monsters that you just keep making content and feeding it to them. And they just keep wanting more. And so that really worked with what we were doing. Lots of content, authentic content, natural content. And then the other aspect that came in is you have Facebook and Instagram and all these channels. Well, they're a lot like the different 4, 5, 6 Noon. So we really understood how you make one piece of content and do it for different channels. And so that's really where it was born. And that's where the company has grown to now, is just creating lots of video and helping companies figure out how to do it, because video can be very expensive. And so that's what we do now.
That's awesome. And I think you were really in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
And that with your experience in TV and how you were able to parlay that into taking advantage of the social media as it blew up and became a big part of our lives. So we were talking earlier about the trophies behind you. I'm assuming you have a lot of successes that you'd like to share, but can you narrow it down maybe to 1 to 2 that really stuck out to you as something that you're really proud of?
I'm never good at this kind of thing. When someone says something, my mind just goes blank. So I tapped my mom and I was like, what do you think I've been successful at? And so
I love that.
She sent me this list, of things, because moms are always going to be top of the list of knowing exactly what you did well, because they raised you right. And so I think the thing that struck me is, you always hear people say, oh, if I could just save one life, if I could just make one difference. And I think what's interesting is, doing 20 years in news, I did a lot of eclectic things. And I feel like I did do that. We did a story about this breast cancer that was very unusual called inflammatory breast cancer that didn't have a lump, and nobody knew about it, but it was super aggressive and hit super young people. And like in that series of stories, like we really raised a huge amount of awareness, and we really helped our local cancer hospital, sort of gave them the push that they were needing to create a clinic for it. And really spur that on. I spent 3 years, as crazy as it sounds, I spent 3 years on a crime show called Wheel of Justice. We created this segment at 10 o'clock where we hunted fugitives. And like a lot of those stories led to murders getting caught. And so that's a huge impact. But not only that, to tell the stories, we had to go back to people who had lost people to murder, and they would open up and they would just, have to rip open this old wound and share this story. But so many of them felt cathartic because they had lost someone and it had gone nowhere. And suddenly they felt like that story might help someone else's life. And that gave it purpose. So, in news, I did a lot of those things you check off saying, I want to feel like I've made a difference in the world. Now I'm doing videos for companies. We're not saving people's lives. So I think it's interesting because I feel like the successes there are helping companies get this thing they need. Helping companies understand video, helping them understand how to use it. And I think in my company, the things I'm most proud about are we hire females. We hire female videographers, we hire female editors. I know there are females that have come through our company and are still with their company who get to be the lead on sets. Our sets are very different. There isn't that male hierarchy. It's really meant to be collaborative. It's really meant that, everybody on set, which is very difficult because it's very much changing the way sets are run. And it's hard because, you're going against the grain. But I feel good about the women that I've given confidence and the women who've learned things. I know women editors have come in and the way we edit is different. And so they're really learning how to edit fast, and they're learning how to edit, with compassion and lifestyle and authenticity, and how to really create things and have a voice. So I think in my company, being able to give women any opportunity to me feels really good. Raise a glass was really fun when we were able to do that. When the Women's March happened, I thought that was really incredible. And a year after the Women's March, I was like, I really want to celebrate that image, that kind of thing. And so COVID kind of put a damper on it. I think it was one of the last events people went to before COVID closed everything down.
It was.
The concept was really, who makes these spaces for women? Like, you get women who end up in the spotlight, these CEOs that end up in the spotlight, or someone who wins an award. But there's so many things like Evolver and WTF, and even you doing financial classes for women and learning for women. It's all these women who are helping women figure out how to be in the spotlight. And that's really what Raise a Glass was. It was just a toasting event because I was like, I'm a small company, I can't afford a dinner.
Right.
But I can afford liquor. Like, we can do some liquor and snacks and just raise a glass and toast. And that was neat. Even in the small way I was able to do it, that felt good to be able to identify and recognize some women and let them be on stage.
I think I can tell you the people that I know that were a part of that event, either before COVID or the previous years, they were really honored to be recognized. And I think, to your point, even though it was a small token, if you will, it really made a lot of people happy. And even as somebody who attended those events, just sharing in their successes and they're being highlighted. I mean, I think it was definitely something that made a huge impact in our community here in Chicago. So, I think you should be proud of what you did there too.
Yeah, I count that as a success,
Absolutely.
I think that is something that is important to me. I think it goes back to, most people get into news, you're really getting into it with this authentic feeling of wanting to help the world. But I wasn't really smart enough in biology and chemistry to become a doctor. And right. I really wasn't in school for the long haul to be a lawyer. And so I feel like this is my little way of trying to use experience and skills to do anything to help make anybody's lives easier or bring confidence to anyone. So those would be my successes, like, it's great. I mean, winning the Emmys was really hard, even in a regional sense, because you do it for years and years and it's luck of the draw, and do you have a good story? And so I didn't enter that often, but the stories I won them for were all really significant stories that I felt had an impact and I was really proud of. So I'm really proud of those a lot. But
that's fantastic, especially as a woman in tech, right? We already talk about how it's such a male-dominated industry, and something that you said about kind of going against the grain. I mean, I can't even imagine what it was like pitching social snacks videos to these companies that were so old school in their mentality, for them to even understand that, the world and the trends were changing and they needed to either get on board or they were going to die, right? So I'm sure you can share with us some of your lessons learned along the way too.
Yeah, what's interesting is I was prepared for businesses not knowing, because I started my business, I mean, it's almost five years ago. We're closing in on 5 years ago. And the first 2 years was just figuring out how to do the business.
Right.
You know, the world was changing. People were starting to get ideas on the video, but companies didn't really understand it. They didn't really understand how much you need, how to tackle it, how to create it in bulk. And I knew that would be hard. What I didn't expect was on set is really hard. Like getting people, because video is set up in a hierarchical, male dominated set. So the women on sets typically have been clipboard holders. They're the producers, they're the location people, they're the consistency people, they're the stylists and the props. And what those people are the people who work weeks to get to a video production. And then all the male roles were cameras and audio who showed up that morning, you know, shot things and left.
And got all the credit.
And got all the credit, got more money, and had the final say. Like they'd be like, this is the way the shot's going to be. And you're like, but we've been working on this whole time. And I mean, I think I was just part of news where it was hard. You start the day and you're trying to get stuff on the air. You know, it's lots of run and gun. Several times I was on like, you know, oh, this kid's been burned and we're going to interview him, but oh, let's stop for the knifing on a bus or the fire in the house and then go to it. So you're really used to this sort of problem solving fast pace. That's where it was interesting to me, like building this on set atmosphere where it's truly collaborative has been really difficult because it's really going against this hierarchy of the guy on the set behind the camera is in control of everything.
Got it.
And it's all helping him see his vision. And that's just not the way collaboration works, especially with females, is it's all about what do we all think and how do we all get there, and let's jump in the boat together. And so that has been the hardest part of male domination, is finding people, getting them on set, you know, and finding female friendly males who like are willing to listen to females. You know, that's a big thing. But you know, when I look back at lessons learned, I think, you know, when you're in news, it's very male dominated too. I worked with a lot of male photographers, you know, a lot of general managers were male. And a lot of the females who got to that space learned how to work in a male dominated society, just like on set, which means they sort of have the maleness rub off on them. So they're also in that, I'm in the big chair now, so I lead. And you're like, that's just not all that great. But you kind of learn that, or at least I learned, like there'd be a brick wall and you just keep running at it and running at it and running at it and running at it. And then eventually you get through it. So if I was in the car with a photographer, I just kept chatting them up until they fell in love with the story. So I just felt my whole career has been selling everybody to get them to do what I wanted to do. Like making it excited, making it interesting, just ignoring the fact, just going in knowing they're not going to like it. And you just have to keep convincing them until they do, or keep pushing for what you want. And I think that is very true of entrepreneurship, is that it cannot feel right. It cannot look like you're winning. It can look like failures all around you. And you can look at that and be like, I suck at this. And I probably do. I suck at a lot of parts of entrepreneurship. But my job was always to keep the boat moving. And I think that's what I learned in networking, was finally you were in a room and somebody, I'm like, oh God, I'm so embarrassed because, you know, I put stuff on my credit card to pay my employees last month. Or, oh, I pulled out some stuff from my 401k to keep my business going. And then you hear other people dig, and suddenly you're like, oh, okay, this is how they're doing it. Like, they're not like masters. Everybody is struggling to figure out how to do it. And unlike a lot of men who learn through apprenticeships or watching other men, a lot of times women are just sort of like trying to figure it out. And that was very common. I saw a lot of men and another man was working with them. And as they worked together, they were teaching them. But I rarely saw a woman in that spot. Like, and that's where I started saying, wow, that is where you struggle. And so the lesson learned was, you know, if I'm waking up and I'm still keeping things afloat, then I'm going to call that a success. And maybe it's going to take me 4 or 5 more years than someone else who knew how to do it, but I got time. And, you know, if I die tomorrow, I'm like, hey, I went out going. Like, I went out building and trying, and all I can do is try. I think at some point I looked at it and said, look, I have made sure that my family and I get along. Like, I have worked hard to stay in with my family, even being all different than them. I worked hard to make sure that relationship is strong. And what that has bought me is, if tomorrow I go bankrupt, what's the worst that's going to happen? I'm going to pack up my bags. I'm going to go home and I'm going to live in a spare room until I find a job, and I'll earn the money and I'll get an apartment and I'll go back out. But I just didn't want to go to my grave being like, I didn't even try this.
Right.
The other thing I learned was I had a really hard time in those spaces where I'd have an idea, and a lot of times the people above me, I got a no. I'd see these guys and they got yeses and I got nos, and then I'd prove it and then we'd have it. And I think when this came about, I did not want to own a company. I think I told you this. I didn't want to own a company. I do not want to be the boss. I would love to just go make stories, but nobody was doing it the way I wanted to do it.
Right.
Nobody was really looking at video production as a strategy and a plan and helping companies find videos. And so I sort of did it just because I saw this idea and wanted it to be in the world. But that has some downsides too, but that's a lesson learned is as long as I'm swimming and surviving, I'm gonna keep going forward. And what's the worst? I fail and have to start over. Then I get to have a great comeback story. So
right.
Every comeback story starts with a big failure, right?
Absolutely. And there's a couple things that you didn't say that I hope our audience hears clearly is first and foremost, you have to have passion in what you do. I mean, that's how you could continue to run against that wall every day and get knocked down, because if you don't have a passion for something, you're never going to be successful. The other thing that I think makes for a really strong entrepreneur is someone who is willing to fail. A lot of people aren't willing to take that risk. They're not willing to look at it and say, hey, there's a need for this. How can I make it, make something better? How can I be innovative, right? And I saw that quite a bit when I was in financial services in corporate. I mean, something as simple as the exchange traded fund, the ETF. And, Goldman Sachs like, we're never going to get into that space. And, 10 years later, they did, and they were so late to the game. And I'm like, that could have been something they could have been the leader on, and so I love that you shared that, just keep pushing. If you really believe in something, go for it. And I think that's really a very clear message that I hope that our audience gets out of this conversation today.
I think too that one of the things news taught me was I loved all the experiences, the good and the bad.
Right.
I was at the Fort Hood shooting, where you're there and people are sad. I've been in a room where an entire family is sobbing in the room as someone tells the story of someone being murdered.
I can't imagine.
I've also been in a room and talked to people who are on, The Voice, and people who have done really crazy, amazing things, and, people who survived great things and bad things. And I think I just love being able to have the experience. I love trying things. I was never afraid that if I wanted to go to a movie, I went to the movie. If I wanted to go eat, I would go eat by myself. I had no problem doing things solo, because the thought of not experiencing it was more. And I think that's what you have to really think about is what's your internal voice? And then why are you going to deny yourself something you want to try? Right. I think experience is everything, having those experiences.
Totally agree with you. Couldn't say it any better. So along the way, I'm sure you've learned some money tips, and those could be anything from personal financial habits to negotiating a salary or benefits. Do you have one or two that you'd like to share with our audience today?
I think when you asked me this, I was like, oh, this is a terrible thing for me, because you're my money person. So money, I don't think I have any tips to offer when it comes to money, but I think I might have some insight on how to use your money smart in your company.
I like that.
We do video, and I think a lot of people don't do video because they're afraid of the cost. They're afraid of all of it. You call and someone's like, it's $5,000 and you're going to get one video, and you're like, oh my God, that's so much money. Right. I think there are smart ways to do video and use your money appropriately. So I would say if you're a small business, like if you're a small service business or you're a small product business, I would say you look at investing in that videographer for a day. Like you can get a professional videographer for $600 to $1,200, which sounds like enormous, right?
Not in the scheme of things, not when you just said 5,000.
Right. And so, but I think when you do it, I think it's not thinking of it as one video. I think you think of it the way you think of headshots.
Right.
Like I'm going to get headshots, and that's going to be for when I am a speaker on my website, on these other things. So if you are a speaker or a service person, sit down and think of 24 things. 12 things. Think of 12 things that people ask you, or 12 things that you're an expert on, and get all 12. And then you click those, and that's 12 videos. That's one video a month you have. And that probably takes you 10 to 15 minutes to talk about on camera. If you have a product, think about all the ways you can use that product on front of the camera. So what I'm saying is, you take one production day and just think of getting a whole bunch of content. Because I think people think of video as, I'm going to make this one video that I need for this one thing. And you really need to be thinking about it differently. So I think people think of video like my meal. I'm cooking a meal for a dinner party. And the problem is, then you get one meal and that's it. What you need to be thinking of is, all these video clips need to be like the pantry in your kitchen. You get a whole bunch of clips, and then you make all your meals. You pull these clips and you shape them for breakfast, and you shape them for lunch, and you shape them for dinner. So you're really thinking about, how do I get video content that I can then mix and match with? And I know people are like, oh, I don't have 600, I don't have 1200. Here's the thing. You've got the new iPhone, which people are shooting movies on. They're shooting movies. So you can, if nothing else, find someone who can help you design it, or figure out what you need. Or, like, we are happy to do strategy sessions. Like, what do you need? Here are the videos you can create for yourself, and come up with a plan going into that day. So I would say that we get a lot of people who are speakers. They speak at things, or they want to speak at things. And we'll always say, do you have any video of you speaking? And they're like, no. And I'm like, how do you not have video of you speaking? Like, literally, just get a phone and get you on stage. So here's my tip number one. I brought a prop. So, like, you see these. This is a ring light, right?
Yep.
It has a little phone holder, and you put this in the audience, and you aim the phone at the stage where you're talking. And then you just hit record. And you let it record you on stage. Because when someone edits, they can push into that. They can pull out of it. You do that high res enough, right? So you do that. And then the second thing I'm going to tell you is, I have two options. I'm going to pull these off camera. So here's one. These are like $30 or something on Amazon. It plugs into an iPhone. So you put one phone out in the audience, you can wear another phone, you plug it into the phone and record your audio. So you have clear, crisp audio. That's one thing to do. They have these other things, Zoom.
Oh, wait a minute. What's that thing called?
It's just a microphone. You can put smartphone, microphone. This one's kind of nice because it has a little latch that you can say a phone or something else.
Okay.
I'll send you links so you have them, so you can include with this.
Absolutely.
The other thing I would say worth investing is this is a Zoom. So Zoom is what we use, like literally what we use in video production. And they just created these things, and you can see how small this thing is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They have a clip. So you can put a digital recorder on your waist and have this plugged here and record you on stage. You give that iPhone video and the recording of your thing on stage, and this is digital. So like, you can record everything on here. It'll record for hours on a little SD card. You get like 128 gig SD card. You can record like for years on that thing. Then you can hire an editor who can work for like $65 an hour or $35 an hour, but $65 an hour to take that video in your audio and make you like a little sizzle reel. So that's like $125 on Amazon. Wow. And it's perfect sound. Everybody should be doing that anyway, because you need your audio. If you're going to talk at a conference or something, ask if they're doing video and tell the videographer, I want to purchase my section. Or tell the person who you're probably doing this for free, say, look, I will do it for free, but if you're recording, taking snapshots or video, I want my clip. Just raw. You don't have to do anything. Great advice. Just give me the raw clip, because editing is the cheapest way to get to video. It's taking the camera out and going on a production, and shooting is what's so expensive. So my best video advice is to get video any way you can, and to really think it through of what you're doing, and get what you can, and then work with an editor to create what you need. And that's my best money advice, because then that saves you money and hopefully makes you money. Absolutely. And I think you point out a couple of things. We spend money to get a headshot. Why wouldn't we take it one step further in today's digital age? Number two, I love the different tips that you gave, because obviously that could work for anybody, a presenter, a small business owner. But I know recently you've had some success working with some Fortune 500 companies. So, I want to take a minute and recognize the success of Social Snacks Company, because you've really
gone from working with entrepreneurs now to really this bigger space and kind of everything in between. So congratulations to you for that. That's quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, I think, we just started during COVID. We now have 2 lines of videos. So in our brand snacks line, that's really focused on consumer brands. And that is we are now working with several global companies. We are working with them as video partners, because that's something we can deliver this regular content they need of just repeatable content. Because they can go to big, huge video productions, do campaigns, but they need these just run and gun. And then during COVID, we launched what we're calling Pro Snacks. And that is really for professional services. That is your lawyers and your doctors. We started off by focusing on specialists in the medical field. So we've done retina and done very well with that. And the concept is just that professionals, a lot of times professionals, you all do the same thing. All dentists brush teeth, all dentists fill cavities. What makes me pick a dentist is who they are. And so Pro Snacks is really helping bring that authenticity to the camera so that when someone's selecting them, they can start trusting them before they even get in the office. And that has been so fun to do because it was a concept we had that has really proven out that it really has been helpful and valuable to them to have the tons of content and be able to start using it. So what's interesting is when we started, we would go to companies and they're like, oh, we can't afford it. We don't know what to do with it. And now we have companies where like every quarter we're meeting with them and saying, what are you doing? And we're like, here's the 15 ways video can help. And they're starting to get it and it's starting to be repeatable and they're building out libraries and they're figuring out how to use it. And so that's felt very successful that we no longer have to even explain why they need it. We're just helping them learn how to use it. So yeah.
And I would say to anybody who's listening to this interview today, especially in the capacity, like you said, the medical field, lawyers, real estate agents, even financial advisors, where there's so many of us that need to distinguish ourselves from our competition, this could be a really great way to do it. And to your point, show your genuine, authentic self, right? Because when you have that many people that are in a similar field, it's really hard to dig through all the people to kind of find somebody that you want to work with. And I think that this could be a really great way to do that. So, this isn't just for entrepreneurs or public speakers or corporations that are selling a consumer product. This could truly be for anybody who wants to shine and show their passion for what they do every day.
It is really amazing how impactful it is. We had this doctor who was in the fertility space and he had a really thick accent.
Mm-hmm.
But his stories were so fun. Like what he was talking about was so engaging that you really felt for him. And I thought it was such a perfect example that if you walked into the room and he came in and he started talking with an accent that might scare you, it might make you concerned, but you had met him already. You heard his accent. You heard what he was saying. There was closed captioning. You knew what to expect. So when you walked in the room and this guy comes in with an accent, you knew, like it was comfortable because you're like, oh, you're the guy I just saw.
Right.
Like, I think so much of it is getting people to trust you before you get in a room with them, because then you move past all that trust. You move right to the questions, right to the time. And when you come to like lawyers who charge hourly, financial people who need to know, you need to trust them. You go doctors, I mean, come on, trust.
Right.
That really helps immensely to just have that right there already. And be able to communicate information. So it's funny because we've moved past video being social and video being tools, recruitment tools, lead gen tools, but also time tools. Because if I already know stuff, I'm not taking your staff's time. So I think it is really interesting in the strategy of video space, not just the production of video space, that we have a lot of fun in. Now it's just learning the business side of scaling and getting somewhere, right?
Well, there could be worse problems to have, right?
That is true. That is true.
Yeah. Well, Tracy, I want to go ahead and thank you again for your time today. Where can we find you if somebody is interested in learning more about Social Snacks? I'm assuming we can find you on LinkedIn.
Yes, you can find me on LinkedIn. The website socialsnacksvideo.com, so that's easy enough. Yep. And our email is hello@socialsnacksvideo.com. So we're very easy to reach, and we're happy to talk strategy for any budget. But yes, we have really broadened out into the bigger consumer brands, and the Pro Snacks line is the one that we're really focused on launching right now. So yeah, we're not that hard to find. You just look for all the monsters.
Okay.
Here we go. Let me move over here so you can see them all.
Oh, there they are. Yep.
There
And
you
just
go.
for the record, they are not cheese popcorn snacks.
They are not. We used to have a joke when we met in person that we feed human snacks and then we feed your social and digital. So the snacks are usually what we provide, and then what we make is snacks for your social and digital. But you're not the first person who thought we were a snack food company.
Well, thank you for the clarification. Again, thank you for your time today. It was a real pleasure to hear your story and your money tips. And I think you gave the audience a lot of valuable content today.
Great. Thank you so much, Mel. Thanks a lot. It's I'm glad that you're doing this. I'm glad that people get to see these. So great job.
Thank you.